Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, March the 3rd. My name is Jennifer Miller. I will be chairing the meeting this evening. I would ask you to pause and reflect as I read the land acknowledgement. On March the 3rd, 2025, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might be here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Today, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. I'll call the meeting to order at 5:01 p.m. I have a recommended motion for the approval of the agenda, moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Maguire, that the March 3rd, 2025 Special Committee of the Whole meeting agenda be approved as circulated. All in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest, general nature thereof? I will declare a conflict on item 10.1. My employer is a community grant recipient, and just as a technicality, Councillor Quinn will chair this item. We have no approval of minutes, no delegations, and we have one director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a quick one, and it relates to the Heritage Conservation District Plan Open House that's occurring this Thursday. So just a reminder to the committee and for those viewing at home, we're having an open house between 5 and 7. It will be hosted in the Town Hall Welcome Center here within this complex. And the purpose is to get feedback on the plan that's being built right now for the Heritage Conservation District. The committee will recall back in November you approved a study that led to the creation of a plan. So it'll be a great opportunity for anyone to come out, particularly landowners in the downtown that may have questions. And input will help us build the guidelines surrounding the Heritage Conservation District that will be brought forward to committee later this year.
Any questions? Councillor Maguire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. C.O. Morris, thanks for bringing that up. I hope we get a good turnout. I'm wondering if somebody needs to have an accessible entrance to the facility, how will they get in for that consultation?
Yeah, good question. So through the chair, we'll be able to bring people through the front main entrance, which is fully accessible.
Okay, so it'll be unlocked and...
it'll be accessible, so we'll have staff available to help anyone that might need assistance.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you. We have no committee of the whole consent reports, so we do have an in-camera session this evening. We have a motion. If I could have someone, Councillor Maguire, seconded by Councillor Robinson, the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls, as provided in Section 239(2)E of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended, move into a closed meeting at 5:04 p.m. to discuss a proposed acquisition disposition of land. All in favor? Carried. We'll be back shortly. Thanks for your patience. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. We moved in camera to discuss a proposed acquisition disposition of land, and we are back now to our agenda. We are moving into priority issues, and for 10.1, I've declared a conflict, so I will hand the chair role over to Councillor Quinn.
Thank you very much. So, 10.1, priority issue, 2025 community grant allocation and program performance report, and this is with.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair. The report before you is with regards to the 2025 community grant allocations. Staff came in January with recommended options, which Council was supportive of. Since then, we've had an applicant come forward requesting to withdraw their application. They would no longer be eligible for the allocated amount as their programming in Smith Falls is going to cease to exist. So that's really unfortunate. But on a positive note, that leaves us with a little bit of extra money to reallocate to some of the applicants who didn't receive money because we didn't have enough in the fund. So staff has made some recommendations to reallocate that funds to the Horticultural Society, Davidson's Courtyard Shops, as well as the Gordon Pipe Band, who all were eligible to receive funding. And the total allocations are included in the report. Council at the time also asked for additional information about the program's performance over the last few years. So staff went through and looked at the information and provided a summary of some performance measures. Some of those include the total amount and a number of applications that were approved since 2018. The fact that there's 38 separate community organizations, groups, or individuals that receive a total of almost $1 million of town funding to support a number of community programs, services within our community. So I'm happy to take any questions from council if there is any.
Thank you. I was wondering why have these 3 new ones versus a lot of the ones didn't get the full 100% ask of what they were looking for? So what's the policy or the strategy behind adding these 3 versus topping up some of the existing ones?
So through you, Ms. Chair, through Councillor Maguire, actually every applicant this year did receive the top funding. So these were the last ones on the list. This year, based on the score of each of those applications, we started at the top and funded them the full amount until all of the money was gone in the pot. So actually the majority of all applicants received 100% of their ask this year. So it's only Gordon Pipe Band that did not receive their full amount just because there was simply not enough left in the pot. But we felt that they were an eligible applicant and wanted to give them something to top out what was in the pool this year.
And through the chair, follow-up. For the Horticultural Society, the Davidson Courtyard Shop, can we get more information on that? Just we can't, the cells are too small for the text, and get a good idea of what we're funding there.
Sure. I know that the Horticultural Society has a number of annual programs that they run. Davidson's Courtyard is to activate the courtyard with music and bring in people for June 9th to October 6th. So they want to make it an open space and bring in live music and encourage people to come and gather in that space. And the Gordon Pipe Band, again, is to fix and to upgrade some of their musical instruments in order for them to do their concerts and their parades and stuff that they do as part of the organization. Is that helpful?
Just thank you, Madam Chair. Just to speak in favor of the staff recommendation, I do support the additional. I think they're all terrific, and just want to give a shout out the hospice grant that's in there, which we've already agreed to. But I hope it does inspire our neighboring municipalities to also contribute. The hospice will need probably 3 or 4 years of kind of publicly funded as they build the reputation and as their fundraising goes broader to the greater community. So I'm just really pleased that we're able to, it really does contribute to the vibrancy and the excitement that we're trying to, and the culture of our community. So I'm glad to see this. It was almost good news to see somebody step back and add some more money, spread it further.
Okay.
Thanks, Julia. So 4 organizations or applications were ruled ineligible, but we pulled one of the 4 out and ruled them eligible, Gordon Pipe Band. Can you explain why the other 3 were ruled ineligible and not considered for funding with this new development?
Yeah, so there's only 3 that was considered ineligible. The 4th one was actually PEP after their situation changed. So Gordon Pipe Band was eligible for those funds. The other 3, for a number of reasons, were not eligible. Some of that was that they couldn't show revenues in order to pay for their 50%, because this fund doesn't cover all of their expenses. It's 50% up of net eligible expenses. So some of the applications came in showing no revenue or no way to generate revenue, which means it makes them ineligible for the funding.
Because I know I heard from Pivotal Health, and then I guess one where they provide free counseling to people in the community. Is that one where they weren't able to demonstrate other sources of revenue? Because obviously they have to operate, they can't operate with no revenue.
Yeah, exactly.
So they just weren't able to prove other sources of revenue that they are relying on, I assume.
Yeah.
Unfortunate, okay. And the other thing with the Davis Courtyard group, I mean, my reluctance there, it's a number of businesses. And so they're really trying to bring in entertainment for the community. At the same time, it's really not an unincorporated group. It's a group of businesses that are trying to bring people into the courtyard to try and help enhance the environment and business.
And through you, Madam Chair, I think part of that as well is building on the culture and the music scene within the community. So we used to have the On the Roll program, which provided business owners and musicians to do live music in our community. So it's building on that theme and that program. So it did fit the criteria, so they were not ineligible for that.
Thank you.
Thanks. And yeah, just to follow up on Mayor Panko's point on that, if we're going to spend $4,665 on music nights, it's great, but I want us to look at that holistically and what are we spending on the DBA grants? You know, like they've got their levy and they've got their budget, but we've also given them money for events to activate the downtown. Chamber of Commerce is getting money to activate events in town. I don't want to. This goes back to the policy and where I think the policy might have shortcomings that we need to revisit this year. And that's if we're going to spend almost $5,000 on a cover band to come in, play music for a couple hours, and go home on a Monday night for 17 Mondays, is that the bang for the buck we're trying to get out of this policy? Because through the on the roll funding, there was a real emphasis on supporting artists that create their own content, which generally, to me, adds more to the arts and culture scene in town than just having somebody come and play other people's music. So what are we trying to accomplish with this money, and how is the success of spending that money going to be measured? Like, are we going to know how many people showed up every week in the report next year? Are we going to know what kind of spending occurred? Because, you know, we invested the $4,600 and the businesses received $20,000 from that, from extra business that they wouldn't have otherwise had. Like, there's got to be some kind of metric to measure this stuff, because it's a lot of money and it's hard to understand what the return on investment is based on the report tonight.
Any other comment? I'm going to chime in. I think everyone has to justify what they've done with their money, whether it's the courtyard, bringing in musicians, but I think anything that we're doing is drawing people to town. And I think that's very positive. And if we ask them, you know, how did you spend your money and how did you generate more people in the downtown or coming into town? And I maybe shouldn't be commenting because I am in the courtyard, but it's to generate business, it's to draw people here. We have a beautiful town, and that's the big thing, is to draw people in. Same as the Gordon Pipe Band. Their name is out there and people know that they're from Smith Falls. That's a positive. Any of this money that we're spending, I believe, is positive. And if we ask these entities to come back and give us clarification on how they spent the money and what the results were, I don't see anything wrong with that. But I think this is a great decision that you have made, and I thank you.
And just through you, Madam Chair, too, so we do the annual report. So how it's structured is, this year specifically after the changes, is all applicants, eligible applicants, will receive 75% of what they were eligible for. They will receive their 25% after they provide us with the final report. So that does ask things like how many people attended your programs, or how many people did you serve, how many visitors came to the event. So we will have more of that information. We did for this year. Staff just didn't have time to go through 38 applications to get all of the information for this report, because we want to get the money out there to the community and let them all know that they have funding and can start running their programs.
So just, I hope we've got pictures, we've got receipts, we've got tangible information to back that up, because it's hard from a lot of the information provided to date for this stuff through the meetings and through the emails. It's really hard to get the picture of the value that we're getting. So for me.
Judy, I think that's what you're doing, though, is you're going to follow up on all these to see how well our money has been spent. We're not just going to hand it out and walk away. So with that, I thank you. Now, any other comments? Do we have an agreement to go ahead with this? Thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll turn this back over to Councilor Miller.
Thanks, Councillor Quinn. So we're moving to 10.2 with CAO Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's actually 1 month ago we had a discussion about the potential threat of tariffs and what we could do corporately to modify our procurement practices. So a month later, we're on the eve of tariffs. I understand at 4 o'clock, the President of the United States confirmed that the tariffs will take effect at midnight tonight. So, so it looks like it's happening. So at that time, committee had given staff direction to do some research on how we could modify our purchasing. So, so we've done a couple of things. Our industry associations, AMO and FCM, are working on this exact question, specifically looking at what are the trade barriers that exist that prevent us from giving preference to local or Canadian suppliers, and the legal ramifications of doing so. So we're still awaiting the answers to those questions. And I can say in AMO's defense that during the election cycle, the province wasn't forthcoming necessarily with advice. So now that the provincial election is over, we're hoping that some information will start flowing. And we can understand what the province is doing in terms of their own procurement. As we know through the media that there are discussions about removing the interprovincial trade barriers that exist. So with those potential removals, we may see some freeing up of the ability to buy products within the province of Ontario as opposed to necessarily looking beyond. So, so there are 3 trade agreements basically that are at play here. There's the Canadian-US-Mexico agreement, formerly NAFTA. That's the one that's probably most relevant, I think, in this circumstance. There's the CETA, the Canada-European Union, probably not an issue, although we are obliged under the CETA agreement and the CFTA agreement, that's the Canadian one, to not give geographical preference for purchase under 120,000. So if we're buying a backhoe is a good example, that's worth 220,000, we would have to follow the CFTA guidelines. If it were a smaller piece of equipment worth 100,000, we wouldn't. So we're just trying to sort out what our obligations are under those agreements so that we don't inadvertently contravene them. But what's important, and what I want to talk a little bit about tonight is we've drafted a resolution that asks senior levels of government to remove barriers and give us tools to buy Canadian. So then we could come back with some policy language that would enable that locally. But one of the things that came up is should municipalities or any level of government specifically exclude U.S. suppliers? And that gets a little more difficult to answer. So we can seek out an answer if it was council's intention to go that far. So that's one thing I would like to get some clarity on. The other thing, the other element at play is AMO is doing some work in terms of infrastructure spending over the next 10 years, and they've come up with a fairly broad number, $250 to $290 billion. That's what Ontario municipalities are poised to spend over the next 10 years. That's a pretty significant purchasing power, so they're looking at it from the lens of how does that leverage purchasing. They're also looking at it from the point of view that if tariffs were to depress the economy, let's say we were going into a recession, that AMO wants to advocate for infrastructure or stimulus spending that could be needed if tariffs end up with a negative economic impact. And I think we all agree the potential is there for that to happen. So, so that's happening. I'll report more on that once AMO finishes their work and gets back to us. But we've submitted our infrastructure spending forecast to them, so it's part of that $250 to $290 billion that could very well be spent over the next decade. So, all that to say, we've attached a resolution. The resolution really provides some background. It provides a few statements. The most important ones is that that council supports the Buy Canadian strategy, whatever that ends up looking like. That we advocate for stimulus spending if it's needed, and that we encourage local residents to purchase locally or at least purchase domestic. So with that, I'll open it up or be prepared to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, appreciate that. The resolution's well worded. Do we have questions? Councillor McKenna?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's a great starting, and I think this is the right resolution for the point in time we're at. We'll see over the coming months, and I hope it doesn't last that long, what else we need to do as more information comes forward. So I think we're sending a statement about how, if council approves this, how we feel about it, and I think we're not alone. I would also just add one point, and this is more for tourism. My particular beef is not with the American citizens, and those who want to get some relief from that noise down there and are looking as to come up here as tourists, we would love to have them. And so that's my own personal view, and I hope that if there's opportunities to market a modern, wonderful community and country, that we'd love to have them come up and spend some bucks here. So I'm speaking in support of the resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson?
Thanks, Madam Chair. More of a comment than anything else. I support the resolution. I think we should be doing that anyway, supporting Canadian, both local and domestically, where it makes sense to do it. But we all know it doesn't happen all the time, and we've got limited funds. So sometimes you have to spend internationally. But I'm in full support of this, especially at this particular point in time.
Mayor Hancock?
Thank you, and thanks for the report. And as much as it seems like completely nonsensical that we're here, we are. And it's a good first step. And it's just unfortunate that I think it's just a first step, and other actions we're going to have to take as we move forward to get further direction and support for both the province or AMO. But it's more symbolic than anything else. But at least it helps us reaffirm where we stand on this issue. Thank you.
Councillor Quinn?
Yeah, it's been a wake-up call, I think, for us all to start looking and support Canadian, our own country. There will be things that we can't purchase here in Canada, but let's support what we do have. And move forward. I think this is a good wake-up call. It's a shame it's happened. It's a shame it's the way it is, but we have to deal with that. But I think
So you have support for your resolution, and I would just add that I'm I'll finish my thought, Councillor Brennan, and come right to you. I'm the council rep for the Chamber and DBA boards, and certainly in the last few years, we've been promoting shopping locally really heavily. I think this just takes it to the next level and helps our residents really understand that this is an opportunity to be aware of where they are spending their money, and we would encourage them to read the labels and do what they can in this difficult time. Councillor Brennan, final thoughts?
Yeah, just want to support the resolution. I would add, and I would applaud Councillor McKenna's comments with our American friends, but the resolution is fine the way it's worded. But when we talk about whereas tariffs are not in the best interest of Canadian consumers and businesses, that goes both ways because it's not going to be in the best interest of our American friends either. So, very unfortunate situation, and I'm glad we're on record.
Thank you. C.O. Morris?
3 additional points, if I may. Happy to advise that we had a backhoe in our capital budget for this year. We placed the order today, so we got in under the wire. So whatever the tariffs might be, we won't be paying tariffs. It came in under budget, so that's good news. But it was a really good example of trying to distinguish what's Canadian made versus Canadian assembled versus Canadian packaged. And so there are websites, the federal government's working on that. There are many websites, but we really, I think, need to encourage people to do their research. A sticker that has a Canadian flag on it doesn't necessarily, or a maple leaf on it, doesn't necessarily mean it was made in Canada. So I think it's going to complicate, to some extent, our purchasing. We're going to have to do more research, and in the times and the challenges we face, it's probably time well spent. But I think that's going to be our challenge is understanding exactly what's made in this country and doesn't at some point cross a border. Because the product could be assembled and made in Canada, but the steel that went into building it may have crossed a border and be subject to a tariff. So it gets very complicated, but we'll to the extent possible, try and sort that out. So the other item I raised earlier was excluding U.S. purchases. So I think in the absence of clear direction, what I might suggest is that we focus on giving preferential treatment to domestic instead of specifically excluding U.S. And the reason I would say that at this juncture is there may be cases where that U.S. product is considerably less expensive. So I think we would need some latitude to make a decision. So what it would mean effectively is making a conscious decision to, in some cases, spend more for a Canadian-made product up to a limit, and we'll have to define what that limit is. So if council's comfortable with that principle, we'll bring back some language to try and meet the spirit and intent of the principle of giving preferential treatment to domestic products. Is that a fair assumption?
You're seeing nodding heads.
Okay.
Today.
Great.
Today. Yes. We'll see what tomorrow brings.
It could all change.
I think we know.
But that's clear direction, thank you.
Thank you, and we look forward to seeing that motion on the council meeting right after this committee meeting. Thank you very much. And that ends our priority issues. Are there committee, board, and external organizational updates that you want to do in committee of the whole? No. We have no correspondence items, no notice of motions, so I will call for a motion of adjournment. Thank you, Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Brennan. All in that the meeting adjourn its proceedings at 6:19 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. All in favor? Thank you.
Brief recess. Chris, you've got the consent agenda. Do you have a seconder?
Peter?
Okay. I think that's all this afternoon. Yeah. Reports. Who's got reports? Nope. Nope. Maybe he's contemplating it, or he's having a snack first.
No, I don't think so.
No? Reports?
Nope.
Dawn?
Peter has Buy Canadian,
Okay.
and Dawn has funding agreements.
Seconder? You're Buy Canadian? No. Dawn, your seconder? I'm not even going to ask anymore. I'm just going to put his name down. We go down in history as the name most often cited in council meetings.
Like I said before, I need to be good for something.
And so the resolution is as written, right, I guess? Yeah. Yeah, that's the Viking, so you got that here? What you got there? Okay. Oh, it's on there, okay, okay, good, okay. Guess we're ready to roll?
Sean just asked us to give him a second.
Yeah, the only one that can't hear that is Peter.
Oh, you can't hear it?
I hear a high-pitched tetanitis, just a bell ringing.
I think your tinnitus is fine. It's just the squealing.
PM. Ask for motion for approval of the agenda is with Councillor McKenna, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that the March 3rd, 2025 regular council meeting be approved as circulated.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McKenna, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that the March 3rd, 2025 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Ask for disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest and general nature thereof.
I would have a conflict in 10.1
So noted, Councillor Miller.
due to my employer being a recipient of community grants.
Thank you. We have approval minutes is with Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Robinson that the minutes of the February 18th, 2025 council meeting be approved as circulated.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Miller and seconded by Councillor Robinson. The minutes of the February 18th, 2025 council meeting be approved as circulated. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Council reports. Anybody tonight has a report? I've got just a couple myself I'll mention. On February 20th, the Smith Falls for All Committee met. We had 2 delegations related to food insecurity. One from the Southeast Health Unit, as well as a second that included Brandon Tazo, who is a counselor for the City of Kingston, and Elaine Power, who is a professor at Queen's and a long-term advocate certainly for against food insecurity and for basic income. So it really helped confirm some of the suspicions we had regarding food insecurity in our community. And so just so council's aware, the committee will be addressing a potential resolution that will be mirroring, very similar to what was completed in Kingston and some other municipalities recently. And they'll be coming forward to our meeting next week, I think. And then be coming to council, I assume, subsequent to that, assuming the committee advances that. And then just want to mention myself and some other members of council to my left. We participated in Bowl for Kids on the 22nd, and a great activity for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and obviously successful fundraiser they're very much dependent on. So we're all very happy to be part of that. That evening, I participated in the Coldest Night Walk of the Year in Carlton Place. Very well attended. Again, I think a very successful event. Coming on the heels within a day or two of the news they were not receiving this year a federal grant they'd received every other year for a number of years, over $100,000. That's deeply impactful to their operation. So I think that organization, Cornerstone Landing, is trying to work through those challenges right now. But it was very appropriate timing to have the Coldest Night of the Year walk. They're trying to help support their activities and the support they provide for the community. And then last Thursday, the RBCA met, approved the 2025 budget. So it's a modest increase over our previous levy. Don't think a dollar amount in front of me, but it's within just a few $1,000s difference. They're not even that 2,000, some I think difference. So not significant overall. And that's it for my reports. I have, yes, Councillor McKenna.
Well, you prompted me to think of the brand new Southeast Health Unit. They too approved their first ever budget for 2025, a $60 million budget, quite substantial, but that was the 3 health units merged budget. So, and you'll recall in our budget in Smith Falls, our rate went up 5% for the municipality of Smith Falls. Not 5% of 60 million, just 5% of our rate. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any further reports that came to mind since? No? Okay. I do have 2 proclamations today. World Energy Efficiency Day, a day to reflect and make a difference. Whereas since 1998, March 5th has been recognized as World Energy Efficiency Day, whereas World Energy Efficiency Day aims to raise awareness of the need to reduce energy consumption through reasonable energy use. And whereas finding ways to avoid energy waste, electricity, gas, water, is critical in the fight against climate change as it contributes to emitting less carbon and methane in the atmosphere. And whereas everyone can take some measures to achieve a good level of energy efficiency and reduce their carbon footprint. Now therefore be resolved by Sean Panko, Mayor of the Town of Smith Falls, hereby proclaim March 5th World Energy Efficiency Day in the Town of Smith Falls. For that, although a society-wide problem, every little bit helps, and community members are encouraged to celebrate World Energy Efficiency Day by using energy responsibly. So everyone wear a second sweater on Wednesday. Thank you. Second proclamation, International Women's Day is March 8th, 2025. Whereas International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. Whereas International Women's Day is one of the most important days of the year to celebrate women's achievements, educate, and awareness raised for women's equality, call for positive change advancing women, lobby for accelerated gender parity, and fundraise for female-focused charities. And whereas International Women's Day 2025 campaign theme is Accelerate Action, because at the current rate of progress, it will take until 2,158 to reach full gender parity. And whereas Accelerate Action emphasizes the importance of taking swift and decisive steps to achieve gender equality and calls for increased momentum and urgency in addressing the systemic barriers and biases that women face, both in personal and professional spheres. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Sean Panko, Mayor of the Town of Smith Falls, hereby proclaims March 5th International Women's Day in the Town of Smith Falls, and further that everyone, everywhere can play a part in helping forge gender equality. Okay, so moving forward with our agenda, we have a consent agenda with Councillor McGuire, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna. The items in consent report number 03-2025 received from the clerk be received and adopted.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McGuire, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that the items in the consent agenda report 03-2025 received from the clerk be received and adopted. Clerk Costello, may you please review the consent agenda?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's 3 resolutions on this evening's agenda. The first is to award RFP 2025 Corp 001, the IT strategic plan. The IT strategic plan, and that's to Perry Group Consulting. The second is the 2024 bylaw annual report. And the third is a resolution for the Municipal Heritage Committee appointment of Victoria Maitland. And there's one bylaw on this evening, and that is regarding the community improvement plan for 44 Chambers Street.
Thank you. Would anyone like to pull any item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Vote. No. With that, I'll ask all in favor. That is carried. Thank you. And Councillor McKenna, you have our next motion.
Thank you. This is referred to as the Buy Canadian motion. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Robinson. Whereas the United States President has indicated he is planning to impose 25% tariffs on Canada effective March 4th, 2025. And whereas municipalities have significant purchasing power through capital and infrastructure programs, and whereas according to data from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Ontario municipalities are expected to spend between $250 and $290 billion on infrastructure in the next 10 years. And whereas tariffs are not in the best interest of Canadian consumers and businesses, and whereas federal and provincial leaders are encouraging Canadians to buy Canadian, and whereas municipalities have traditionally been prevented by trade agreements from giving preference to Canadian producers, and whereas the federal and provincial government can remove any impediments to municipalities preferring to engage Canadian companies or capital projects and supplies. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls endorse the federal and provincial call to buy Canadian and calls on the federal and provincial governments to work with municipalities on measures to protect Canadian consumers and businesses, and ask the federal and provincial government to remove any impediments to municipalities preferring Canadian companies for capital projects and supplies, and encourages citizens and businesses of Smith Falls to purchase products that are made in Canada. And that the Canadian and Ontario governments continue to invest in infrastructure to provide stability, jobs, and support our communities' social and economic prosperity over the long term. Be it further resolved that the town clerk forward this resolution to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, Lanark Frontenac Kingston MP Scott Reid, Lanark Frontenac Kingston MPP John Jordan, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities.
Thank you. And further discussion, Councillor McKenna?
Yes, we've had a couple of opportunities. It won't come as a surprise to anyone listening that we're under considerable stress with these imposed tariffs from the president, and that Canada is prepared to push back and will push back to the best of our abilities to see if we can, and we all hope this ends soon, but buying Canadian, if this municipality can do anything to avoid buying American-made products, we will do so.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, it's moved by Councillor McKenna and seconded by Councillor Robinson. Whereas the United States President has indicated his plan to impose 25% tariffs on Canada effective March 4th, 2025. Whereas municipalities have a significant purchasing power through capital infrastructure programs. Whereas according to the data from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Ontario municipalities are expected to spend $250 to $290 billion on infrastructure in the next 10 years. Whereas tariffs are not in the best interest of Canadian consumers and businesses, and whereas federal and provincial leaders are encouraging Canadians to buy Canadian, whereas municipalities have traditionally been prevented by trade agreements from giving preference to Canadian producers, and whereas federal and provincial governments can remove any impediments to municipalities preferring to engage Canadian companies for capital projects and supplies. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls endorses a federal and provincial call to buy Canadian, and calls on the federal and provincial governments to work with municipalities on measures to protect Canadian consumers and businesses, and asks the federal and provincial governments to remove any impediments to municipalities preferring Canadian companies for capital projects and supplies, and encourages citizens and businesses of Smith Falls to purchase products that are made in Canada. And that the Canadian and Ontario governments continue to invest in infrastructure to provide stability, jobs, and support our community's social and economic prosperity for the long term. Be further resolved that the town clerk forward this resolution to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, Leonard Frontenac Kingston MP Scott Reid, Leonard Frontenac Kingston MPP John Jordan, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And Councillor Quinn, you have our only bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to authorize execution of funding agreements with recipients of 2025 municipal grant funding be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It is moved by Councillor Quinn, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to authorize execution of funding agreements with recipients of the 2025 municipal grant funding be received read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor Quinn?
This was something that wasn't expected, where an applicant had to decline being part of this program, and so that left some money that has now been allocated to other applicants to move forward with this grant funding.
Thank you. Any further discussion or comments? May I have a third reading, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself.
Sorry, I'll just mention, sorry, it just includes the approval for all the community group improvement plan, sorry, the community grant applicants, yes.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to authorize execution of funding agreements with recipients of 2025 municipal grant funding be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10608-2025.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Quinn, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to authorize execution of funding agreements with recipients of 2025 municipal grant funding be now read the third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10608-2025. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Welcome back, Councillor Miller. And before we move on to our confirmatory bylaw, inquiries and announcements. Councillor McKenna.
Just thank you, Your Worship. I recently had the opportunity to attend an all candidates meeting for Lanark Frontenac Kingston. I want to congratulate the 6 people who put their name forward and thank them for doing that. And just to also thank or congratulate MPP John Jordan on winning the election.
Thank you. Any further inquiries or announcements? Seeing none, confirmatory bylaw is with Councillor Quinn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meetings on the 2nd and the 18th days of February 2025 be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Quinn, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting on the 2nd and 18th days of February 2025 be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor Quinn?
This is something that we do on a regular basis so that our minutes for the meetings are proper.
Third reading, please.
Thank you. Were moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meetings on the 2nd and 18th days of February 2025 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10609-2025.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Quinn, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting on the 2nd and 18th days of February 2025 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10609-2025. All in favor? Carried. And our final piece of business, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Miller, that this council adjourn its proceedings at 6:40 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Miller. This council adjourns proceedings at 6:40 p.m. and stands so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council. All in favor? We are adjourned. Apologies to Councillor Brandon for not saying that tonight. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
I didn't see his face, did you?